Hey, Makers. Wow, I came to Makers the first time 4 months after the Dobbs decision. And I told you then that we were going to see almost up to 24 states ban abortion and limit access to birth control, and then next would be IVF. And I hate that I was right, but here's the map. Abortion is criminalized in 21 states. 1 in 3 women of reproductive age, plus more trans and non-binary folks, cannot access abortion in their home states. These abortion bans have made pregnancy more dangerous. We need only look at the stories of Kate Cox, who had to leave Texas in December for her abortion, even though she was literally moving back and forth to get care in the emergency care unit because she was at risk of sepsis. In Ohio, Brittany Watts endured a miscarriage and was arrested and charged with a felony, meaning that not only do abortion bans make pregnancy more dangerous, but they also put people in danger of being criminalized for pregnancy outcomes. And 2 weeks ago, the Alabama Supreme Court declared that frozen embryos are children, causing IVF facilities to close really mid-process for so many patients. So we are now not only being denied the freedom to decide not just whether or when we become parents, but now also how we become parents. Abortion is back in front of the justices in 2 cases in the next 2 months. A month from now, the Supreme Court will hear a case that could significantly limit nationwide access to the abortion pill and also determine whether or not states have the ability to override a federal law that requires hospitals to provide emergency care, right? This is just basic. And it's all on top of a maternal health crisis. Before the Supreme Court's decision, 1/3 of all US counties were named maternal care deserts. Providers are leaving states with abortion bans, taking expertise with them, particularly managing high-risk pregnancies. 10% in July 1, when OBGYN's residents match into their future schools, future residencies, we saw a 10% decline of OBGYNs matching into banned states. Labor and delivery units are closing. These are many of the same states with the highest maternal mortality rates, making it harder for families not just to survive, but to thrive. So we know the fight for agency, and we are going to have a conversation around fighting today and what we need to do to fight back, is a fight for reproductive freedom. And it's one from menses to maternity to menopause. And I've got some incredible legends in the conversation with me today. First up, literally, is someone who is on the front lines, I'd like to say, of fighting fascism every day. She is suing freedom deniers. She is fighting bad legislation. She's implementing effective, safe policy. She is the senior staff attorney at the Center for Reproductive Rights, and she was also co-lead on the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case. Please welcome Hillary Schneller. Amazing. Oh my gosh, Hillary, there's like literally so much I want to cover given your work on Dobbs and where we are in this moment. But you also have like a really comprehensive background in abortion litigation prior to Dobbs. And I think one of the themes that we have been seeing, as I talked about, is how abortion restrictions impact maternity care and other reproductive care. Can you speak a little bit about what you were seeing and have been seeing kind of over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad to have this question because, right, the map that was up a bit ago showed the states that have banned abortion. Those are the same states that have the worst maternal health outcomes in the US, the least supports for women and families and pregnant people. And so all of these issues are inextricably intertwined, right? When we sued Mississippi over its abortion ban that ended up being Dobbs, at that time, it was 75 times more dangerous to continue a pregnancy and give birth in Mississippi than to have an abortion. And that number is much higher for Black women in Mississippi. So, you know, all of these issues, these decisions about our health and lives are all absolutely intertwined. On the legal front of that, I sort of always want to make the point that sort of 2 things can be true, right? Roe was never enough to guarantee robust and equal access to abortion across the country. It also provided a foundation for a right to safe and healthy pregnancy, but that was never really guaranteed.
Right.
And at the same time, the loss of that federal protection for abortion has been absolutely devastating. It has put abortion much further out of reach for so many people. And the lack of affirmative protections for decision-making in pregnancy around maternal health means that pregnant people are not trusted with their own bodies and health, and opens the floodgates to a lot of what we're seeing in the aftermath of Dobbs.
Right, absolutely. And when you don't trust someone, right, essentially what you're saying is that you are not equal, right, which is how we are kind of framing these conversations. So next month, I mentioned Supreme Court will be hearing 2 cases, one on mifepristone and one on EMTALA. Do you mind explaining what those cases are and what those implications will be coming into this political season?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think of those 2 cases together, one of the things I think about is the Supreme Court statement in Dobbs that overruling Roe would simply be returning abortion to the states. So starting with the abortion pill case, right, this is a challenge to nationwide access to medication abortion. Anti-abortion doctors have sued the FDA to roll back access to medication abortion, which accounts for more than half of abortion care in the United States. And this will impact people regardless of where they live in the US, whether they live in a state that has banned abortion or that has the most robust protections for abortion. So it is important to pay attention to regardless of where you are situated there. The EMTALA case sort of demonstrates how far states are taking the power that the Supreme Court gave them in overruling Roe. So EMTALA is a federal law that requires hospital emergency rooms to provide stabilizing treatment to people, including pregnant people and including abortion care when that is the necessary treatment. Idaho has a near total abortion ban. And in general, federal law takes precedence over state law. So it should say, okay, Idaho, you have a criminal abortion ban, but still hospitals are required to provide this treatment. Idaho is saying, no, we would like to allow hospitals to refuse pregnant people life-saving care. And again, these can have just absolutely devastating impacts across states with really strict draconian abortion laws.
I just want to underscore what you're saying here, right? On the mifepristone, you're saying essentially New York and California are not safe, right? Or any other state where we could get access to that. On EMTALA, what you are saying is that they are fighting for the right to let patients die, right? Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of, we have sued the state of Idaho about its criminal abortion ban to try to say, you have to at least allow people to access abortion in medically complicated situations. And one of our clients, Jen Adkins, in that case, an Idaho woman who was denied an emergency abortion, has said, this is Idaho saying loud and clear, they do not care about your life or your family, that Idaho is willing to let you die. So that really is what, it's sort of not being hyperbolic, that's really what's at stake.
I wish we were being hyperbolic. Especially when we talk about Alabama. I feel like we can just go through the alphabet of states here, right? Let's talk about Alabama. How do you see this issue progressing through the judiciary, and what else is kind of happening with so-called personhood bills related to this statute?
Yeah, so sort of the idea of personhood, whether it's coming from court rulings or legislation, again, sort of erodes reproductive autonomy and pregnant people's ability to make decisions about their health and lives across the board. So whether it is in the context of abortion or creating families through IVF, I think of our client, Amanda Zarowski, who is our lead plaintiff in a Texas case where we are challenging, again, the state's incredibly draconian abortion laws. Amanda spent 3 days in the ICU after being delayed accessing abortion care. As a result of an infection, because of that delay, she may no longer be able to get pregnant. She and her husband have been advised to try IVF, and she recently, after this Alabama ruling, has shared she's moving her embryos out of Texas because of concern about a similar ruling, right, or policy in Texas impacting her. So, right, it's people don't lead single issue lives. All of these issues are impacting the same people.
Right. So the kind of summary here, right, is that abortion bans were not just about abortion, right? Abortion bans were also making pregnancy outcomes more dangerous. They are also making, access to other ways of contraception and conception less safe. I'm sure if we had more time, we would talk about the impact on contraception, on emergency contraception, as well as gender affirming care, right? All of the kind of efforts to control. What, for this group of makers, do you think is the most important set of things for them to be thinking about and doing? How would you kind of empower their fight for agency on this now?
Yeah, so I would say a couple of things. So one is the importance of sharing stories. We represent a number of people in Texas, Idaho, Tennessee who have been denied emergency abortion care, to say this is the reality of the cruelty of abortion bans. States, policymakers don't believe us when we say that. So being clear about the reality is really important. For corporations, there are a ton of things that can be done, right? So in the Supreme Court, there have been amicus briefs in the abortion pill case on behalf of pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, saying the ripple effects here for the court controlling these decisions about what medications are available across the country have devastating effects. There are a lot of efforts that corporations can take to improve coverage for pregnancy care, IVF, abortion access. There are companies sort of represented in this room that have taken those proactive steps, and more can sort of join them. I know, Bumble, Morgan Stanley, Lululemon, Disney, many others have taken those steps, and it's important that more join them. And the last thing is, corporations often have sort of public policy arms and really influencing lawmakers. Like, there is power in corporations, and they should use their voice to tell policymakers we care about the reproductive health of our employees and the residents of the states we're in. And I'll say the Center for Reproductive Rights does a lot of this work in trying to bring corporations into this fight. So we have some folks in the room if people want to pull us aside to talk in more detail about that.
I think I just want to underscore that point, that last point you made, because it is, I think when this first happened, people were like, oh, I'm not sure if I can say anything. Really there was such a kind of false equivalence, right? That there are people on both sides of this issue. And I think what we have seen and proven now post-Dobbs is that 85% of Americans, the consensus is with 85% of Americans who believe that Roe should have been the law of the land, or even more, right? 85% of people, including, I think, like 70% of independents, 50% of Republicans, they don't want to see national bans, which is what we could be looking at in the upcoming election. And the fact that people's voices, this is now a very clearly defined strategic interest. If you're making a choice to open up a business or expand your business in a state for lower, taxes or deregulation, and it's coming at the expense of your workforce and coming at the expense of the community, that's a place where I think we can get a little bit stronger in helping the public policy folks engage with community on that. So with that, I want to thank our incredible co-counsel in Dobbs, Hillary Schneller, for all of your work. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.